welcome to Detroit. You did a panel yesterday with us, and you had an opportunity to spend at least a little bit more than 24 hours here. How you feel?
I feel really, really great. I feel taken care of. I feel welcomed.
Well, you know we got to take care of our queens.
Yeah, and I feel it. I feel it. You have been a gracious host. I appreciate it. I would come here anytime.
You know the goal is for me and Rita to spoil you, so that if you get invited anywhere else, you're gonna compare it against what it is that we
Okay.
do.
Okay. I'm down with that.
No, but I absolutely I think that you're a queen. I value what it is that you bring, not only to what it is that we do from a content creation perspective, but also in real life. I think that your life is a reflection of the things that you advocate for, and it is absolutely a pleasure to just have you here and to be able to have a conversation, right? And so I think you already know, but I don't really ever have a script. I just like to just have conversations based off of authentic, vibes and wherever it goes and things like that. But I do have, and me and Rita actually Rita had asked me this in a car, but she was just, curious as to what your journey was from a religious perspective or a spiritual perspective, because you're Muslim, right?
Hmm.
And for those of you that don't know, Miss Crimson has been here, and she was absolutely a delight to be on the panel that you guys probably already seen and witnessed. Um, but you are Muslim. How long have you been a Muslim?
I have been a Muslim since 1996. I did what people call taking Shahada,
What is
which
that?
is the statement. A Shahada means to bear witness or to witness something or to declare something. So that declaration happened in 1996. I was 18 years old. I was going to UIC at the time. And the reality is that I had been on a spiritual journey since I was like 13. I was raised in the church. I was raised missionary Baptist. If anybody listening is from Chicago, the church that I was raised in is called the Church of the Living God, Temple 120 on 60th and Union in Inglewood.
You know you've been raised in the church when you know like the details, because I was raised Pentecostal,
Okay.
so it was. I think it's a lot of similarities, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that church is still standing. It needs to have landmark status because it has been there. My grandfather was the pastor there.
Wow.
And so my mother was raised in the church. She raised us in the church. I was singing in the choir, the whole 9 yards. But
You got a voice on you
when
too. I heard you
I
singing
try to
earlier.
have a little something to, Mama blessed me with the pipes. Mama blessed me with the pipes. So,
Yeah. You know somebody is in a good space or in a good mood when you can hear them singing.
and I try to sing often because even when I'm not in that mood, not in a positive headspace at a particular moment, I often turn to music. Music has typically been a place of solace for me, a place I found peace because my childhood was really traumatic.
Really.
And so I would always escape into music. And it didn't have to be gospel music. It was that too, because my mama always played gospel music. But she also had what would probably be considered a gold mine of vinyls. My mother had thousands of records. And old school, I'm about to go old school on a lot of y'all. She had a record player, like,
Yeah.
the set, the cassette was this level, the radio was that level, the top level was the turntable.
Yeah.
And then the big speakers on the side. That's how we used to have our radios and stuff, stereos set up in the house in the 80s and 90s and all of that. But it would be all kinds of music because my mother, she enjoyed music a lot, so she enjoyed different kinds. She had gospel, but she also had like the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
And she also had like the Ohio Players, and she also had the Temptations, but she also had, and Sade. And so I grew up with that mix, and I would always turn to music. So going into the church and then going into the choir was a natural transition for me. But my spiritual journey actually began because once I got about 13 or so, I'm going to church all the time, but I don't know much about the actual religion. I know about church, but I don't know what Christians are supposed to know.
Okay.
And so, you know, every black house got the family Bible where everybody's so big old Bible. So King James Version, we had nothing but the King James Version. So I said, let me read it. And so because I had already sort of been, I used to like Shakespeare. So the language of the King James Bible didn't throw me off. So I started reading it. I must have read the Bible cover to cover probably 3 times in succession. By the time I got done with about that third time, I said, I'm not Christian. I'm not Christian.
Oh yeah, what made you?
And
what was that revelation?
It was interesting because I liked what was in the Bible, but what I didn't like was what was being taught in the church, and I found that there were significant differences.
But your father was a pastor.
My grandfather.
Grandfather was a pastor, and this is at the time that he was over the church and he was a pastor.
He had retired by the time I was 13, because my grandfather was well up in age.
Okay.
He was 92 in 1992. So,
wow.
So I had questions, and long story short, I asked those questions. First, I asked my mother those questions, and she didn't really have the answer. My main focal point was, how do you explain the Trinity to me? I didn't get it from a logical standpoint. And I wanted the logic of it. I'm like, I know y'all saying God, okay, he can be anything. I get that. But it's got to make sense. Something was just like, it don't really make logical sense. So I went to the then pastor, which was not my grandfather at the time. And I asked questions. And they could not give me a satisfactory answer. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm just missing it. I am 13. Maybe they saying something that's over my head.
Right.
Okay. So I didn't make a rash decision, but in my heart, I didn't believe what they were teaching in the church. I had more of an affinity for the Bible, but to me, in my mind and heart, those are two different things. And so thus began, I started reading up. Over the course of years, I started reading up on, first it became like an Afrocentric thing. Learn about, African ancestry or spiritual systems or this or that. And I don't know how true any of that information was at the time, but I was just reading it. And then I went into Taoism, Eastern religions.
Okay.
What were they about? And a lot of those spiritual systems didn't necessarily have a patriarchal God that was above them. And so interesting philosophies, good things to live by, but it didn't strike me as this is the truth.